Hey soldiers, the Fed is not making any progress against inflation. We exposed the great inflation lie. We had Jerome Powell come out and admit that, the average American family is still feeling the brunt of inflation. And as I always like to say, you don't need him to tell you that. All you need to do is go to the grocery store or the gas pump. Well, now Peter Schiff is saying that this inflation thing is getting so bad that it's exhausting savings and also exhausting lines of credit.
Prices continue to rise. I think what was significant was the consumer spending and income numbers we got yesterday, because you had a big spike in spending, but a very small gain in incomes. And the way consumers handled that was rating their savings. The savings rate plunged down to 3.5%. That's a sign that the economy is weak, because consumers need that rainy day fund, right? Because it's raining, they're having a hard time. But also it shows that the Fed is not making any progress in its inflation fight. And so inflation is going to get worse. That's what the markets really have wrong. And in fact, look at oil prices today. We're above $85 a barrel and headed much higher. So nothing has worked, and the markets are completely wrong on their benign outlook for future inflation. So the proper response would be for the Fed to actually continue hiking rates, but at the same time, the government has to cut spending.
Where does the American consumer go when they don't have any more savings and they've maxed out the credit cards, okay? In an environment where we learned that the job numbers were bogus also, that all the jobs that they are harping about creating, well, those jobs are part-time jobs and second full-time jobs by and large. And that doesn't portend well for an economy that's supposedly healthy, right? Why would you need a second full-time job if the economy was healthy, right? Well, maybe you think you might be laid off. Maybe you're just not making enough money to afford groceries. I harp on groceries because I like to cook, all right? But even if you like to go out and eat, you see it there too. And you might see it more in restaurants because they need to get the food transported. They need to make a profit, okay? You don't need to do that at your house. You just eat the food, right? So let's get into what's going on here. Peter Schiff is saying that the Fed isn't making any progress against inflation. He appeared on a platform and poured a bucket of cold water on those who believe the Fed is winning the inflation fight. Schiff says, in fact, they're not making any progress at all. And we always look at John Williams' shadow stats. Why do we do that? Because we do not believe the U.S. government. And we certainly don't believe the Pravda-esque mainstream media when they come on and just parrot whatever the administration told them to say. In the case of unemployment, you could basically interview some news media folk. I know plenty of them. And you could say, hey, do you know the difference between the U3 and the U6 unemployment rates? They wouldn't know what the hell you were talking about, okay? They just read a teleprompter. Seriously. There's nothing investigative going on here. And because they just read a teleprompter, they are not aware of, and they have like a predilection against wanting to find out more. Wanting to, kind of piss off, or being willing to piss off these government employees who are supposed to be public servants. They don't ask them tough questions about this economy by and large. That's not what I see. Okay, but Peter Schiff goes on. Peter started the interview by noting that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has revised the non-farm payroll numbers for all 7 months this year. We told you that a few videos ago. So here's what they do. They'll come out and they'll say the August numbers for unemployment, oh, they look so good. They were great. This is what happened. We're, Bidenomics is working. And then later on, when we get to October, they'll issue a revision for those August numbers. But again, the news media will fail America, and they won't come on and say, hey, breaking news. The number we told you about the unemployment, that figure we gave you for August, has been revised. The picture was nowhere near as rosy as we initially reported. The federal government has issued a revision, and more Americans are working part-time and second full-time jobs to make ends meet. Have you ever heard that on the news? I don't watch the news on TV, okay? And somebody say, well, Bloomberg's playing in the background. Yeah, and it's playing at the same volume that it always does. I look for the headlines, and it makes a nice background. So in that case, you're not getting the full picture of what is going on. All right, they're just reporting what's beneficial to the administration. Okay, and the same is true with inflation. They are not giving you the inflation metric that includes food, energy. Okay, that's the things you spend money on most. Oh, it's too volatile. We don't include that in certain numbers. We can't do that. Why not? I'm exposed to that volatility as a consumer. If we've done something 7 times in a row, it doesn't seem very random, right? 3 times is a trend. 7 times, we've revised these numbers down, okay? Because if these were random numbers, sometimes they'd be too high. Sometimes they'd be too low. Like, it's difficult to toss heads 7 times in a row. So if you toss it 7 times in a row, maybe the coin is not fair. That's Peter Schiff speaking. Schiff said he thinks the BLS, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is biased in its assumptions and thinks the labor market is stronger than it actually is. Yes, I agree. Obviously, unemployment picked up, so that's a sign of weakness. Average hourly earnings up less than expected, which is problematic because prices continue to rise. And you might say, well, why doesn't why doesn't Jerome Powell do what Paul Volcker did? And if he really wants to get inflation under control, drive those rates up hard and fast, get it under control, have the recession, get beyond it, and get back to a reasonable economy that works for everybody. Why doesn't he do that? Well, here's why. Because they plan to inflate their way out of the debt. Said it in another video. Every 30 days, some of the U.S. Treasuries come due. Now, it was fine when they were coming due back when interest rates were hovering around 0. There wasn't much interest to pay on the debt. But now that interest rates have risen, the bonds that are coming due have to be paid at that higher interest rate. And so that's really kicking the Treasury in the hind parts with that higher interest rate. So they're saying, look, we're going to get to a point real soon where we got to lower those rates so that we are not exposed, we being the government, not us, okay? You know, it used to, yeah, there was a fantasy that we were the government. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's long since passed. They want to get those interest rates lower so they won't be exposed to as much interest on the debt. They're going to inflate their way out of it, and it's going to hurt us being the citizens, the taxpayers, the consumers, for a much longer period of time than it would have if we just raised the rates and went through a recession. So the beige book, this is another metric that a lot of ballyhoo about. Ominous beige book warns consumers exhaust savings as recession mentions soar to 5-year high. So recession is being mentioned more. It's, you know, getting closer. I know we've been talking about it for years, but we went through a recession. We still might be in it. Who knows if we can trust the GDP numbers? For the first time in many, many decades, the government went back and said, 2 quarters of consecutive negative GDP growth. That's not a recession. Yeah, I know. We counted it as such for, every instance of that in the past, but not this time, okay? So they're lying. The Fed's latest beige book, released this afternoon, was a rather boring affair, one signaling U.S. economic growth was modest during July and August. What was most interesting within this drab big picture was the divergence within consumer spending, where, according to the beige book, consumer spending on tourism was stronger than expected, surging during what most contacts considered the last stage of pent-up demand for leisure travel from the pandemic. But it's the other side of the equation that was more concerning, as the Fed found that, quote, other retail spending continued to slow, especially on non-essential items. And the punchline, some districts highlighted reports suggesting consumers may have exhausted their savings and are relying more on borrowing to support spending. But here's the deal. Credit lines are starting to be maxed out, all right? And there's some evidence of that because you've seen in June where a whole bunch of money went into credit card balances, people trying to bring the balance down so they can get back to spending, okay? Hopefully a lot of that was put on principal and not so much on interest to help the debt get paid down. But we look at this, June went by, was paid down, and then July. U.S. consumers paid for July's spending spree by burning through $150 billion in savings. So we've gone from using that card, now we're genuflecting towards savings. What happens after that, right? Well, for many, the well will be dry. And if the Fed is determined to inflate their way out of the problem instead of actually solving it, then inflation is going to remain high and you're going to find people with no credit card balance, no ability to rack up more credit, no savings, and potentially no job. Okay? Recipe for disaster. Ahead of the August consumer debacle, which saw and continues to see most retailers report dismal earnings and plunge by double digits on the back of dreadful recent trends. This is about credit card balances. This is about student loans. Oh yeah, don't forget that. $1.7 trillion due on student loans collectively. It is the largest amount of debt, that the public is obligated to pay, is that student loan debt, followed by $1 trillion in credit card debt and rising. This is about credit card balances. This is about student loans, which we know is going to come into focus in the next month or two. Auto loans, mortgages, said Adrian Mitchell, who is Macy's chief financial officer and chief operating officer. So we just believe that the consumer is coming under pressure because these are new realities that they have to continue to deal with as we get through the back half of the year and move into next year. So Biden says Bidenomics is working. For who? Okay, I don't see it. I see us sailing into some pretty challenging waters. We are not a doom and gloom channel, guys. I continue to encourage you. Get with friends and family. Figure out where you can pool your resources for the things that you need. If your employer allows you to work from home, do it. And you should be doing this for several reasons. In fact, if they haven't said you can work from home, go ask them. Because if you've got a child, I know a lot of people who have children, so they have daycare expenses, they have energy expenses that they use to put in the gas tank, not to mention food, all right? So go petition your employer. Unless you are actually hands-on building a widget or something, ask, hey, look, can I work from home? It's going to be better for me and my family. Let me read you this real quick. This is one thing that a soldier of finance sent me. This is from Liz. Now, Liz is also not only a soldier, she's an officer. She's a member of our officers club. If you want to be a member, hit that join button, find out more. Liz says, sad, just causing more cost driving to work. And now what she's talking about is the community post that I made addressing the fact that Russia, Saudi Arabia, and other oil producing companies are going to cut back on the supply, which will raise prices. She goes on, my tenant was looking at a higher paying job with longer commute, more pay, or seemingly more pay. Drive time loss about an hour versus the current 15 minutes. Wear and tear on an old truck. Now gas prices going up. Less time with family. I think he has realized he has a yard, can start a garden. I'm a big proponent of that. And can hunt on my land as long as I get a part. That's what I'm talking about. Cooperation between friends and family, right? That's a side hobby and a possible stream of income. I am rural and firewood prices are all over the place, as well as hay. Feeling some people are selling for pennies on the dollar just to make ends meet. I have some wood to sell, but holding on until prices stabilize. Now, with this oil increase, more people will move to wood. That's part of the way we heat this house is with wood, okay? And natural gas. Listen, guys, this is the perfect example of how we need to be cooperative with one another, all right? And it's also the example, a perfect example how, yeah, okay, come out here. We're going to give you $2 per hour raise. Calculate it. At the end of the day, does it make sense? Okay, after daycare, after gasoline, after commuting, okay, lost time with your family, things that are really important. So you have to make those determinations, but you certainly should. Don't just, jump at something because it seems like a greater opportunity. It might not be at all in this economy. Could have been in an economy with a better policy, okay, but these guys in Congress and in the White House, they leave a lot to be desired. So, listen, guys, check out this video that we put up on, I think this was a few days ago. This video talks about the national debt explosion. You will not believe how much debt we racked up in the first 205 years of this country compared to what we did in the last 3 months. Check it out, guys. I'll talk to you soon.